everyone to our conversation on James Arthur Baldwin. We are happy to be here to celebrate the Centennial conversation. Like I talked to my audience earlier, it is the 100th year. He was born August 2nd, 1924. Yeah. 1924, 100 years. He passed in 1987, but we are here to celebrate his life, his legacy. This is a very important conversation. This is a very important topic. I have my conversation partner with me. Stephen, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell the folks.
Yes, my pen name is The Stormy Poet. I'm the author of 2 published books. And unofficially, I published an audio book that's on YouTube. So technically 3 books, and I'm working on my 4th book. And I'm just a community member who loves literature. I love talking literature. Literature is life to me. And I really was inspired a lot by James Baldwin's work and his views. And so I'm somebody who just likes to talk about literature. I actually host a writing group here at the Dock called the Writers and Readers Society. And we meet every second Saturday of the month. And we get together and just talk about the actual craft itself. We talk about like writing techniques. We talk about marketing techniques. Excuse me, allergies whoop my ass. But we get together and we actually discuss the actual craft, and all are welcome to attend, even people who don't even write. You know, people who are just fans of literature will show up, and we just sit around and chop up game. But that's pretty much the gist about me, and I'm here to celebrate our brother James Baldwin.
I am so happy when I can reach out into our community and strike this conversation, especially in the state of Texas. I think we're pioneering in terms of making the conversation in history relevant and moving the conversation forward. Before we get started, I do want to talk about Black August and what is Black August. And we talk.
Can I mention one more thing?
Go ahead.
I'm a huge fan of the Dock and what they do and what their mission is. What they do is literature is not sexy. The actual promotion of literary arts is not a sexy thing, and you really got to believe in this to do what they do. They're really committed to the mission and to spreading reading and writing literacy into the community, and they smack dab in the middle of the hood. They here and they out here and they doing it, and I have nothing but admiration for that. Most definitely,
thank you so
I have
much.
nothing but respect for that. As someone who promotes that myself, man, and for y'all to be that unapologetic with it and still being on code with it and still being about the cause, that's nothing but admiration, nothing but love and respect for that. Real talk.
Oh, thank you.
I just want to say that.
Thank you so much. So I really want to jump into some high points really about Black August, and I'll let you jump in here. But I talked a little bit about a lot of things we deal with Black History Month. And Black History Month to me is very important, just covering just the span of the African American experience in the United States, and make sure that is on the forefront, and all the information that is provided is truth and accurate. But when we move into Black August, because our history is so vast and there's so much to it, but we can't cover everything. So by the time we move into Black August, we kind of hit some of those things that we can't, because we can cover them in Black August. And some of those things that happened in August, which is why we coined the phrase Black August, is the first Africans were brought to Jamestown as slaves, enslaved African, in August 1619. And then you have the Haitian Revolution. Wow. August 21st, 1791 through January 1st, 1804. If you look at history, you will find out a lot of purchases were made during the Haitian Revolution. So the Haitian Revolution paved way for a lot of opportunities for the United States to become the United States. Great Gabriel Prosser, 1800 slave rebellion occurred August 30th, 1800. The prophet Nat Turner planned and executed a slave rebellion that commenced on August 21st, 1831. I can go in real deep on that, but I'm going to let that go, because that was after David Walker, and I am a fan of David Walker appeal. But in 1843, Henry Highland Garnett called a general slave strike on August 22nd. And the Underground Railroad started August 2nd, 1850. The March on Washington occurred August 1863. The Watts Rebellion, August 1965. August 18, 1971, the provisional government of the Republic of New Africa was raided by the Mississippi Police and the FBI. And the Move family was bombed by Philadelphia on August 8, 1978, and we will be talking about that later on this month. And we did have the Move 9. They did come into our store when we first opened. The group came into the Doc Bookshop. Ooh. So yeah, that was. So we'll be probably playing some videos of that experience. So.
I want to say, wasn't even like the 2020 uprisings. I think that was in August. So even stuff that's recent happened in August, man. Even the thing that happened in Alabama with the chairman and all that happened in August. So yeah, historically.
Red Summer.
Yeah.
Part of Red Summer, August. So Marcus Garvey, Messiah Marcus Garvey. It's so much that happened in,
His birthday, August 17th.
Yeah, his birthday, August 17th, Marcus Garvey, Marcus Messiah Garvey. We were part of the movement that worked with the organization. We didn't lead the movement. We didn't lead the group. That for the exoneration of Marcus Garvey. So led by his son. So we were on call with Marcus Garvey's son for the exoneration of global exoneration, led by the Jamaican consulate. So that was a great experience to be just part of that conversation and lead the conversation with somebody like Greg Carr was there, and they looked to us and a bookstore out in New York, Mahogany, that we were co-moderators. So we've been in these spaces. So what is your take on Black August? I don't want to.
No. I think you broke it down. I mean, even I forgot about Red Summer, but typically throughout history, man, that's been the time when we turned up. That energy that's in August, and I don't know what it has to do with the seasons. I guess just that heat, just kind of we got that melanin, and something that just activates in us during the month of August because it's the most hot and everything like that. So you broke it down beautifully, like all the different historical events that happened during August, and a lot of the gains that we made. Because even recently with the 2020 uprisings, man, a lot of stuff got done without having to go through politics or anything like that. A lot of things, when we turned up, and I don't remember. Didn't even was the LA riots in August? I can't remember if they were in August or not. But when we turn up, and when we can't get things done the traditional way through politics or through the courts, when we turn up, we get stuff crack-a-lacking because they were starting to take down a lot of those Confederate statues and stuff during that time. The police was having to come correct, and it was whether it was sincere or not, they was having to bow and take a knee, do like we were doing, taking the knee. So we got a lot done in August, real talk, all throughout history, and even in most recent history. Was it?
No, it was in April.
Oh, okay, all right.
But I will, I'm not an expert in terms of energies and how energies come up, but I will say Shango Wale, if y'all want to give a Shango Wale, Shango, right over here in the drummer, he is an expert in energies and different things that happen with energies, and we probably need to have a whole conversation on just handling that and dealing with energies. But I do want to jump in. James Arthur Baldwin is what we're here. We're going to strike up a conversation, talk about some of his literary work. Does anybody want to share real quick about James, what they know about James Baldwin, or you want to just jump right into the conversation? Does anybody want to share their experience or knowledge, or
Do y'all have a list of his books that y'all can read off? Because he wrote a lot of books.
Yeah, I can go ahead and do that.
Just shout out some of his works.
He was African American, a writer, civil rights advocate who garnered acclaim for his essay, his novels, his plays. Go Tell It on the Mountain, Time Magazine as one of the top English language novels. His essays on collection notes of Native Son. Oh my God! Has anybody looked at Rare Native Son? Okay, we're gonna look up into that conversation. Helped establish his reputation as a human equality. Baldwin was an influential public speaker and orator, especially during the civil rights movement in the United States of America. I think he had 8 brothers and sisters. He never knew his father. He didn't have a relationship with his father. But so he ended up taking the name of his stepfather. And so he was the oldest of all the children between his stepfather and his mother, Mr. Baldwin. I can think of his first name, Mr. Baldwin. So He had 8 children. He's the oldest. That's a huge task. That's a huge role. That's a huge responsibility. And all the way up until his end, they talk about his relationship with his family. He's always kept, even when he was in France, because he transitioned while he was in France, but he kept a good relationship with his family. Even when he transitioned in 1987, I don't know how old you are, but when I, when I was 1987, where were some of you guys at in 1987?
High school.
Middle school.
Well, his last
Middle school.
nonfiction published work was in 1985, so that was when I was born. The year I was born. So
Where was you at in 1987?
I was here in Fort Worth working. I do remember it too. I do remember when he died.
Hot dog it. Oh.
I sure did.
stomach cancer.
Because of Great Prairie at the time,
Oh, wow.
before.
when I found out, and this was a while back, when I found out back in college that he passed in 1987, I was about to graduate high school 2 years later, 1989. While I was in high school, I wrote one of the best historical papers you can think of because I was just committed to history and culture and knowing who I was. And my high school teacher, he said I had never read anything about that. The paper I wrote about was the Harlem Renaissance. Even in the Harlem Renaissance, and I did that with 1989, I did not write anything about James Baldwin. So that just tells you, because it wasn't in the books. It was about a paragraph of the Harlem Renaissance in my book that I expounded upon. And so learning that I could have gleaned from that information, from that knowledge, from that writing at that particular time, because I was a young adult then. And so to me, just making sure that your young people have those experiences, they don't know what they don't know. And so,
and you know, in a lot of the school books and stuff like that, you typically see writers who don't really look like you. And so you think that you grow up thinking, well, you know, we're not the prolific writers of our generation. You grow up like hearing about Shakespeare and Robert Frost and, you know, Edgar Allan Poe and stuff like that. But you have like these black writers, you know, like James Baldwin. You have these writers who are prolific. And one of the things that got me into literature was hip hop. So we would, you know, study stuff in school about like Robert Frost and stuff like that, and like rhyme schemes and what they were doing with the actual structure of the work. And I would listen to like, you know, somebody like Nas or something like that. I'm like, well, they're doing the same thing, and they didn't have any formal education or anything like that. They're coming up with these, you know, amazing pieces of literature, and they don't have any formal education. They're coming from like absolute nothing. And I think when James started writing, I don't even think he had any like formal education. And he said this a lot. He's like, people would always ask him, they're like, hey, I want to become a writer too. Like, you know, how do I do that? And he's like, well, you don't become a writer, you're born a writer. So to your point, us not seeing those great literary greats and a lot of the material that we studied in school, that has a profound negative impact on us. Literature is so important because literature, the more you read and write, and we talk about this in my group, the more you read and write, the better a communicator you become. If you can articulate yourself in a way where you can express things that need to be expressed, then nothing can be done about it. That's why they banned reading, writing during slavery. They understood the power in that. In Frederick Douglass's my Bondage and My Freedom, he talked about this. One of his slave owners, it was a white woman, was actually teaching him how to read, and then the husband found out about it, and he said to the wife, he's like, the more that they know, the more that they're going to want. So we can't have that. So you have to stop that out. So what I admire about James Baldwin is he could go and comport himself in any stage, anywhere, and he could get his point across. Where even if you were the most vile, racist piece of crap, you had to kind of like pop your collar a little bit to that truth, man. He had just that spirit of truth and that energy of truth to where it was undeniable. And that's the power of literature that I feel that you really encapsulated.
I am so happy you said that, because this is going to start our outline and our conversation. It is dealing with literature.
For sure.
And we're wanting to jump in on that conversation, and we want to deal with the notes of native son.
Okay.
So, and you're familiar with the notes of native son?
Yeah.
Okay. And so, yeah, we've already talked about that. You're like, oh man, why are we gonna jump into that? Has anybody ever read? We're done with literature. Has anybody ever read Native Son or visited the Native Son? Why don't you go ahead and give me background on Native Son?
Well, I read a lot of his stuff, and I had to do like a crash kind of course thing. So can you jog my memory on that? Yeah, I had to do like a crash course on that. So
Richard Wright's Native Son, and
Yeah.
he did a collection of essays from the notes of Native Son.
okay.
And in those essays, he just if you look at the book, it's high potent. It's very powerful of what's going on in Native Son and what that means to be black, what that means to be black in America. And
Right. Okay.
and he deals a lot with, their experience. What are you going through? How do you feel?
Right. And a lot of that is relatable to today and what we're going through right now. A lot of what he talked about is still prevalent today in terms of is that the piece where he was talking about because I think he referenced that in I'm Not Your Negro.
Mm-hmm.
I think he might have referenced that. Was that the piece where he walked into the restaurant and the white woman was like, "We don't serve Negroes here," and he actually ended up throwing a glass at her. I think that's, and correct me if I'm wrong, because he has a wide body of work, but he said that was the first time that he felt like he wanted to harm somebody. Yeah, he wanted to really kill somebody. And I think we as a people, we all get to that point. I mean, to keep it a buck with you, when you have a society that is geared and engineered towards really kind of stomping you out of existence, eventually you're going to crack. James Baldwin talked extensively about you're a human being, and sometimes, or at some point, that humanity is going to have to show up. When he was having that discussion with Nikki Giovanni, and they went through a lot of different topics, man, it was very fascinating. But Nikki Giovanni was talking about, like, why do black men do this to us? Why do they treat us this way? And James Baldwin, he was much older. I think she was like 28 during the time, and James Baldwin's like in his 50s. And he was saying, well, I understand where you're coming from. I understand what your grievances are, but this is how we got to that point. And her thing was, why do you come and treat me like how the oppressor class treats you? Why are you coming home and bringing that to me? And he's like, eventually, they're human beings. You're dealing with human beings. They're gonna crack. You know what I'm saying? And her whole thing was, well, you need to come to me and you need to extend that. You need to fake it with me. And he's like, I can't fake it with you because I love you. If I'm your man, I can't fake it with you. So that humanity is going to show up. But I really like how he got in, what was fascinating about him is how he got into our psychology. To your point about that piece, really not only just knowing it, but actually being able to articulate the psychology of how every black person feels when we're going around doing our daily life. And I really feel he broke that down and he gave like a voice to that. So you would see him speak and comport himself, and you would understand, oh, I'm not crazy. I'm not alone in my thoughts. These are the things I experience every day. So just him going in depth about his daily life, that really kind of gave what's the word I'm looking for? It really put that into not perspective, but it really formulated that and gave us something to look to be able to actually relate to, and to know we're not crazy in our own thoughts. And a lot of the stuff that you can read, a lot of the black writers before us, the literary greats, you can still read those things that were like 40 or 50 years ago, and it still applies to today, most definitely. So I hope I was able to give like a somewhat of a synopsis.
Yeah. And he, back to the notes of Native Son, he really, one of the things that I took note of how it kind of almost like flipped. How they talk about the angry black man.
Yeah.
In part one.
Yeah.
And and it flipped from that to the common day is the angry black woman. And in that conversation, it's like, okay, at that particular time, men, for the greater society, men were on the forefront for freedom and liberation and wanting to be men. Fighting for family, fighting for their children. And so when he wrote that part one dealing with the protests of men, you know, you may see it angry, but let's flip this thing around. We're talking about freedom and liberation, but when the black man goes from that, he's criminalized, demonized for wanting the same thing that you want. And he's called angry. And we're doing freedom and liberation for all, justice for all. And they're demonized for that. Go ahead.
That's why James Baldwin really intrigued me. As a young kid, young man, you know, being the oldest child and in deep poverty, seeing all of his friends growing up extremely poor here in the United States and treated as though they were trash. At times, he said there was moments that he didn't even know how they were going to overcome, you know, make it, you know, selling his clothes. And don't know how he was going to eat and didn't eat for days at a time. And when he goes over to friends, they're wondering, aren't you happy to be here? And he says, basically, no. My people are still there dying. They're still there poor. They're still there trying to exist. And so his courage, even though very successful, his heart was continually with us, with people, poor black people, because he knew we were not saved. That just based on getting up, being able to move or ride or whatever, going to France or whatever, he knew that the struggle was still here, and he never forgot. He represents and is part of the current struggle, although he was successful. He put aside his success in order to embrace the hurt, the pain of his people all around the world and say, this is not right. I need, if you want to help me, help them. Because this is where my
help me help them, and also, you know, if not, just leave us alone.
Right.
We can't be
alone.
self-reliant. We don't really, you know, in a lot of conversations, he wanted, you know, he's seen what help looked like. He's seen what talking to Stokely, working with Stokely Carmichael. I've seen what integration looks like. We can see what it looks like, and it is another level of white supremacy. That's what he talked about. And what we're saying, even in his conversation, he talked about that in his literary works. Even in his criticism and critique of Native Son and all the different characters, Bigger Thomas, all the different characters in the Native Son, his critique of that. At the end of the day, he came back to one central theme: liberation and the hypocrisy and the contradictions of what is good for everybody else is not good for the enslaved African people who are looking for their freedom and justice in a land that they did not choose to come to. So,
It couldn't be like a one size fits all thing where, you know, you're talking about liberty and justice, but you're in a country that is contradicting itself. And what he talked about a lot too is even when it comes to white people, he said they're victims of it too, because they're growing up, and if the history is hidden from them, if they're not being given a subjective reality, then I think one of his quotes was, he said the loneliest person in America is a white man, and he's correct, because they've been fed a history that's not actually accurate, and they don't know subjective reality at a certain point. So they're suffering in a way, and obviously I know, like, you know, we gone through way worse shit, but they're not living in a subjective reality, and they can't understand the dissatisfaction that they feel. They can't really understand it. So he broke that down, and we can't, and James Baldwin was big on, we can't really have a whole America. You can't have a great country if you haven't rectified those sins of the past, first and foremost, and you have to really have a subjective, factual reality for people to go based off of. You can't run a whole society off of a lie and expect that kind of degeneracy to not spill over into other areas of society. So you can't have a quote unquote great America until you rectify that problem. It's still going to spill over into other areas, into even non-black people, and you have to give an honest depiction so that they can rectify that within themselves and move on from that. So yeah, he was real big on that. And when he was criticizing Richard Wright, I do remember him saying something similar to that effect. You have to really deal with the history in a very honest and very brutal way, and you have to provide restitution. We can't move forward as a country until you give that restitution. It's not going to work. It's impossible.
Before we go into your book, we're going to go into this book. Did you have your hands up?
Yeah, I was going to say that, just kind of piggybacking on that. I think that in August when we really do our uprising and stuff like that, I think some of that spilled to that Lorraine Hathaway's Raising in the Sun, even in her, movie and dialogue with that. But we never really show how that we were someone or people that want to actually stand up, take something back. We always show that we're passive and subjective and ready to work and ready to accept whatever somebody gives us, and that's okay. We never, and one thing, this is what gets me. You were talking about the Los Angeles shoot, saying it was in April, and I made this the other day because I do a podcast. I'm John Williams, by the way, and I do a podcast. So I had some people on the other day. I had a couple of players that play professional football, and I had a city councilwoman on, and I suggested that as much as we have gone through since the late 1800s up until the present, as much as we have seen us be castrated and killed in our homes, just pray to Jesus and God and still get shot or whatever. Right. One white man was upset 2 weeks ago, and he took his mother's vehicle and went into this is in California, set it on fire and put it in the woods. I don't want to say it the way I want to say it, but he done burnt from California to Oregon, and they charging him with arson. And a Negro won't pick up a damn match. It's sad.
I gotta speak on that.
We won't pick up a match.
Right.
But they let this white boy burn up from California to Oregon and gave him a damn arson job, but we won't pick up a match after all the hell we done been through. That's sick and that's sad. But go ahead, my brother.
So James Baldwin said to be, and I'm paraphrasing, to be in a state of consciousness is to be virtually enraged all the time, right? And so literature and education is not just a privilege, it's a responsibility. To the point, when I hear people say, I can't read that, I can't watch that, I can't learn that because it's gonna piss me off, it's gonna bother me, then you're living in a false reality. You should walk around in a state of not hostility, but righteous indignation, righteous rage, where you're willing to sacrifice for yourself, for your people, for your nation, for whatever, because I'm a student of history, and I know nobody docile, nobody happy, nobody content, nobody satisfied has ever changed anything for our people. And if you choose to remain ignorant, nothing's ever going to change.
Yeah, and to go back to both of y'all points, we get fed the whole, turn the other cheek thing. They don't talk about that part in the Bible where Jesus was talking about picking up a sword. They kind of leave that out, you know what I'm saying? So a lot of the instances where we did, because that's the thing, there have been situations throughout history where we did turn up and we did fight back, but that's left out of the history books. And a lot of those that were successful, like we go back to the Haitian Revolution, where that was like the first time in history where they actually overthrew their oppressors and they were actually successful. They led a military campaign. They don't teach you about the Seminole Wars. The Seminole Wars where the Gullah Geechees were handing that ass to the United States Army. So a lot of that stuff's left out on purpose. So we think we've always just been these passive people that are peaceful and stuff like that. And nobody's advocating for violence or anything like that. But in terms of standing up for yourself and defending yourself and successfully doing so, that's not something to be ashamed of. And to take it back to James Baldwin, he was always about that life. That little scrawny dude, he was for real. He was with the shits. So, that's why I was chuckling earlier when he threw that glass. He threw that glass on the ass. He's like, that's the first time. Like, that's the first time I thought about taking somebody's life. How you gonna tell me I can't eat here?
Vincent, I'm gonna get your commentary. Then I want to read something from Baldwin, in terms of dealing with contemporary issues. But go ahead.
Speaking on the energy, I'm not an aficionado in that state, but my learning curve, there's something in August, there's things about us, about our culture that we really don't know. There's things that other people have studied and they do know.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at what happens globally on the planet, there's always something that occurs around March. There's always something that occurs around August, and then pivotal points in the year. Well, August is what they're called is known as the Lion's Gate. And if we look at lion, they say that the lion is representative of the tribe of Judah. So we as a people, we really may not know who we are culturally. But if we look at, I think Nat Turner's uprising was in August, and he was given a prophetic vision. He was saying, God told me to do this. So
it was an eclipse, right?
It was an eclipse, the whole 9 yards. So there was something astrological about August, and that may be where we just let our inhibitions down and just go for it because we know that we're supposed to be doing that. And so far as James Baldwin making a connection, I read a little essay. I didn't know that his father was a minister and wanted him to be a minister. So
but he wanted to be a writer.
He was trying to do that, and he just left all of that. So I mean, a part of it is yes, we can't be afraid to speak out for ourselves. And I just love the fact that he like you say, literature. He tied the education with it, and he was able to go against some of I watched the clips of him and Dick Cavett, and I think it's F.E. Buckley or Bailey or whatever, those debates. I mean, you can play those today and they're on point. Wow. Because as a people, there's something that we're not getting. We don't have to go out here and riot or do whatever. If we just sit down and just have a conversation, you'll see that there's something drastically wrong, not saying with us, but with the whole
System.
Period. And why don't we talk about that? It's enough talking about what the problem is. All we need to really do is talk about the solution. So I love when he said, just leave us alone. Just leave me alone. Just leave me alone. And we'll figure it out. As a people, we'll figure it out.
And when we have throughout history, when we did, or left to our own devices and left alone, we got stuff popping. And so that they can't afford to leave us alone. I mean, Oklahoma, classic example. When we left up, and Oklahoma's in the wilderness,
But look at a few weeks ago, or they basically executed that woman. That was an execution.
Yes.
So what was that about? It's really to get our energy away from. Here we coming into August, we don't know. They say the FBI was formulated. They say the FBI was created to watch the black community for the rising of the next Messiah. If you go to the origins of the FBI, that's why it was created. So that COINTELPRO or whatever and all that stuff, it was designed to look at us. So in August, here we come, and this August is, we're just at the beginning of it. So lo and behold, there is something maybe popping off in this August. So, we should just all just be aware and be ready for whatever.
Because black folks ain't gonna do nothing in the winter. We shiver too much, we're too cold. We ain't gonna do nothing in the winter.
I want to say in those which have several essays, he also criticized the black press.
Yeah.
And so I want to bring that fast forward in terms of how he criticized the black press as it emulates the white press. And I say that to say this: there was a lot of criticism this week of NABJ handling of Trump.
Yeah.
And how, first of all, a lot of people shared that they were disappointed in the NABJ participation in or having Trump come and speak. But I thought it was important for them to be open and having that conversation and being professional and being responsible media. And so in terms of bringing them to the forefront, I don't know if any of you guys had certain experiences. I'm looking at Vance, but we need to continue with that conversation on, because that is such a hot topic. And Baldwin did expound upon it, about how he felt about the black press. And what are your thoughts on that?
Well, both him and Malcolm, and they were willing to go on any platform and at least be able to go and articulate their points instead of what we just, and to what you're talking about. I'm not a Trump supporter or anything like that, but Trump showed up, and he showed up and was willing to have a conversation. And from what I heard, they were having like some technical glitches and ended up being like 35 minutes later, something to that effect. But it immediately got into kind of like almost like some mudslinging instead of saying, okay, what are your policies? Having an actual constructive conversation. What are your policies as it relates to the black community? What are you doing to rectify what's been done to us in this country, and actually being able to articulate and make a case for that, as opposed to kind of almost like ad hominem stuff. And again, I'll bring it back to the reason it's so important to practice literature, like reading, writing stuff, is so that when you actually go in front of an audience, you actually have something to say and you can articulate yourself and make your case for that. If you can't make your case for that, then again, nothing is ever going to get done. So they should at least been willing to have a conversation. And then if y'all don't agree on things, y'all don't agree on policy, well, now it's on record, as opposed to, well, we're going to get up here and just start slinging mud, and then it's not going to be a constructive conversation. So that actually, in a way, kind of made him look better, because he was like, hey, look, I showed up. Y'all were like 35 minutes late. It was very unprofessional. I didn't even say good morning or anything. What's up?
So, and I get that piece, but I feel like two of the journalists did actually ask those tough questions, and there was this constant deflection. I watched the entire interview. Even though maybe she could have said good morning, I think that's kind of relevant to the point of when she did hit him with the questions, they weren't answered. And so if you show up, I get it. I've seen people show up at interviews just say, look, I'm here, and now I got my pass, or I showed up, but then you're not willing to address issues once you get there. And I don't feel like you did that.
No, I'm not giving him props. I'm not giving him props.
No. But I'm saying you showed up, but if you show up in a space, but then you're not willing to engage, then why show up?
Well,
He wasn't willing to.
Go ahead.
well, I like the point that he showed up, and a person like him, they are people that he's a person that even when he's trying to sound open-minded or intelligent, he shows himself. And so it's very important for people, the 12% maximum probably of people, black people who are talking about voting for him, it's important for them to see what he really thinks about them. Yeah. It's very important. And so he led it out very clearly, the shallowness of what he thinks about what's going on. So that 12% or whomever is listening, who wants to support him, they can make their own choice based on that.
As a journalist though, it's about making your case. And I personally, it should have been about, okay, we're going to need these reparations. We're going to need cash. We don't have to sit here and have a big, long discussion about it. All right, I'm going to articulate to you, this is why we need the problem is economics. During slavery, what was stolen from us was wealth. We worked for free, absolutely free. We built the wealth of this nation. We're going to need something back, because Trump is a businessman. If you're going to go and actually discuss something that needs to be very businesslike, and we're going to make our case, now he's going to say no. You dig? I know that, but at least now you have that on record. We made our case. We said what we were trying to say, and on record, this dude's flat out saying no. So it's like, all right, well, we're not going to vote for you. We're not going to support you. We made our case. We said what we want. These are our demands. These are our list of demands. Either you're going to come through and correct, or we're just not going to support you. And a lot of the reason why the Democrats are hurting down bad right now is because we've made our demands known, and they're like, well, but I neglect. We got other stuff to deal with. We got to deal with Ukraine. We got to deal with Afghanistan. We'll get to y'all later. And then when voting time comes around, well, get us in there and we'll make sure stuff gets done. And then 4 years goes by. Well, vote for us and then we'll get some stuff done. So I feel where you're coming from. Both of y'all coming from. I'm not.
No.
Please don't think.
No. But I think that's one of the criticisms of the black media. Oh,
That is talking about Baldwin.
That is.
Okay.
No, the Baldwin.
Because that's what Baldwin was. That's what
Baldwin
was
talked
saying.
about the press. He was dealing with the black press, and and emulation of the white press, and he wrote a lot of articles himself.
Right.
And as a writer and understanding the position, what he talked about then about the experience of black people, black citizen, black trauma, in the context of that particular time, where we're in that same state. We're here today. Go ahead.
But don't you think that James Baldwin was an anomaly in that sense? Because if the so-called black media is parroting the same thing the mainstream media does, and James Baldwin is criticizing those people, then is he? I mean, James Baldwin didn't have a boss per se, right? He's a writer. He has these books. Every one book he homosexuality published, so he took it to Europe and it got published. So he's kind of an anomaly to begin with. So I can see why he would be critical of the black media if they were simply parroting the same thing that mainstream media is parroting. I.e., I've not seen any black media major outlets or whatever say we need reparations, or here say you calculate reparations. And those things act like you said it very simple, because you can take away from slavery. You can take the sense and the tax base that people pay when they're supporting schools that they can't even attend. So those things are things that I think that the black media could maybe promote, but I don't see it being done.
And when we talk about the black media, I really don't know who we're talking about.
Well, yeah, because
I don't know who we're talking about.
I mean,
So have anything been cleaned up since? What black media was he talking about then anyway? Because I don't know who we're talking about.
probably the black journalists that work on major stations.
And Sojourner Truth, who? I mean, who are we talking about? What media did we have besides W.E.B. Du Bois and that kind of like media when they were, just putting out what was going on, what was happening to black people? Because that's the only thing we could do is really just talk about what's happening and who the hell we running from and where can we escape to? And when if you criticizing that, then hell, one thing we doing is still running. So I'm trying to figure out who are we criticizing? Yeah,
We still got a few.
we still got, but in essence, but what are we? But what are they criticizing?
But what he's saying is the media then that he was talking about. Did we even have that media then? Yes, they did, but there was so much backlash, and we're dealing with a different type of freedom, right? Our freedom.
That's what I'm saying. What are they talking about?
Our freedom today is different from the freedom that he was dealing with in 1963, in that time period. So if you look at the two environments and try to assess what he was saying, he was, like you said, he was before his time.
So
But this is the time now where you can say the things that needs to be said.
that's what I'm saying. So were they talking about civil rights? Because I believe they were talking about we want to be equal. We want equal, but we don't want everybody to be in our business. And we got to do business with y'all and give y'all the best of what we got and take the least of what you got. Mm-hmm. And that's got to be what he was talking about, because we're not in a position today for them to, like he ahead of his time, to see futuristically that we're making a bad mistake with what we have now than what we were doing then. Because then we're trying to get to the point where we are now, at least better off, but still with the same with the same being dominated. And so today, I think we could make a better argument with what he was saying then now than what he was saying then. Because then you knew who the enemy was, and you knew everybody was trying to fight that, or either was scared of it and was just damn scared to die. So that would be my ideal of it. And then you could only be so bold then anyway. Mm-hmm. Everybody now still is just as weak, nobody want to get on board to do it. Nobody ain't gonna want to die for nobody now. Just like then. And so my ideal would be the strong is only going to survive in the end, because we can keep going around what we need to do, but it's going to be war in the end. In the end, to free black folk was civil war. And that was what was going to do it. And they was going around the conversation then, because nobody want to die. And then the first Negro to get off the dang train before freedom was he was the first one to get shot.
Mm-hmm.
So no, so it just comes down to, are we gonna go to war, or we gonna be passive and keep going around the ideal of what we got to do really to take over, because that's what we have.
Yeah, I just want to touch on that because that was kind of from the notes of James Baldwin, but I do want to jump into your book, the price of the ticket, before we run out of time here, and just kind of share from your.
Yeah, and this there's a couple of quotes in here. This is basically a collection of all his nonfiction works, and it was a tremendous resource in preparing for today. And I wanted to give some read some excerpts from it, from a lot of his works. And one of the ones I got was from his piece called Journey to Atlanta, and it kind of ties in with the discussion that we're having. But one of the quotes in there says, since Negroes have been in this country, their one major devastating gain was their emancipation. And emancipation no one regards anymore as having been dictated by humanitarian impulses. All that has followed from that brings to mind the rather unfortunate images of bones thrown to a pack of dogs sufficiently hungry to be dangerous. If all of this sounds rather deliberately grim, it is not through any wish to make the picture darker than it is. I would merely like to complete the picture, usually presented by pointing out that no matter how many instances there have been of genuine concern and goodwill, the position of the Negro people, their position has not, in fact, changed, so far as most of them are concerned. Sociologists and historians, having the historical perspective in mind, may conclude that we are moving toward ever greater democracy. But this is beyond the ken of a Negro growing up in any one of these countries' ghettos. As regards Negro politicians, they are considered with pride as politicians, a pride much akin to the felt concerning Marian Anderson or Joe Louis. They have proven the worth of the Negro people, and in American terms, which no one can negate. But as no housewife expects Mary Anderson's genius to be any kind of practical aid in her dealings with the landlord, so nothing is expected of Negro representatives. The terrible thing, and here we're the
right.
The terrible thing, and here we have an American phenomenon in relief, is the fact that the Negro representative, by virtue of his position, is ever more removed from the people he ostensibly serves. Moreover, irrespective of personal integrity, his position, neatly and often painfully paradoxical, is utterly dependent on the continuing debasement of 14 million Negroes. Should the national ideas be put into practice tomorrow, countless prominent Negroes would lose their raison d'etre. I'm not sure what that word is, but yeah. Brother was going in, yeah.
I mean, that's telltale.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what I'm saying. You can still relate to that today.
Your representative do not truly know you or connect with you. Case in point, he had a discussion. Now, if you're in your journalist, you're connected to your community, you will know that. I'll just use this for a good example. Just being a bookstore owner.
Yeah.
A lot of people are dealing with small business, have small business, but there's a giant in the room that has taken away, that has spilled over into corporate America and has caused a lot of companies and businesses to close. Amazon is big. That's the elephant in the room. Everybody's trying to create some form of just basic living. But when you have everybody almost, which we don't like in a democratic society, is monopolies.
That's exactly what it is. We need the big octopus.
So now do your representatives really represent you, or they will try to break up some of these monopolies.
Right.
A lot of mom and pop shops are closing. What was that? James Baldwin spoke of a lot of that is becoming devastated because one party knows how, and I'm not going to say I'm for them or whatever, knows how to deal with those corporate giants
Right.
and redistributing wealth because that's what he is. And the other ones, because of their sheer who they represent and who is their backbiting, they get the backlash. Yes, you want to take from corporate, but at whose expense? Are we going to get higher dollars? Are we going to get more? That cost is passed on to the smaller people. So go ahead.
So I have a question, and I'm not familiar with James Baldwin's political affiliation, but given what you just quoted and
Right.
given his worldview, what do you think James Baldwin would see as a measure for holding Black politicians or Black representatives accountable? Because people say that Black people are captured, elected to the Democratic Party. All they got to do is show up and vote for them. If that's the case, and they don't represent us, what do you think James Baldwin's answer would be? Because obviously there were no viable presidential candidates when he was around. But when I say viable, but there wasn't any, it's snowball's chance in hell of winning. And so with that being the case, what do you think James Baldwin's answer would be to making these representatives actually represent us in today's age?
Right. Well, firstly, I mean, you got to be in touch with what the needs of the people are. And to do that, you got to actually come to the people. You feel me? For instance, a lot of these rallies and stuff that you see, a lot of those people are vetted. They don't just let the general public in there. They vet people. They got to see that you're not going to be a problem. You're not going to raise any real issues. And so, first and foremost, you got to come amongst the people. Again, I'm not a Trump supporter, but Trump be going amongst the people. We want that same kind of representation that he gives to white America. That's what we want. Number two, what is the real root of the problem? We're never going to get rid of racism. It's just not going to happen. I think this is what James Baldwin would say. He even kind of alluded to it in a lot of his rhetoric and a lot of his works. We're not going to get rid of that. You can't stop that. But what we can do is, if we have the resources to protect ourselves, which is dollars. I mean, that's what it is. That's what's taken from us. That's why they don't give us anything. He spoke a lot about being self-reliant. If we have the resources to be self-reliant,
That's what
they know, and you give us like a little inch, we'll get stuff popping. You feel me? They know within not too much long of a time, we would actually be able to build something to rival Amazon and stuff. When we get on code and get on the same page, and when we have the economic wherewithal to be able to actually do that, we get stuff popping all the time. And we've done that consistently throughout history. And I think that's what he would advocate for. Back then, it's kind of like we see this thing called racism, white supremacy, right? But do we really know the origins of it? I mean, what's the real basis without getting too deep? But I think you say he was an anomaly. I think he was starting to kind of figure out, okay, why is there this? Why do you have to make this system like what's the root of that? You start getting into the root of it later on with Dr. Francis Scott Wilson and all that. But I think now with what we know, and we have like a better what's the word I'm looking for? We have a pattern we can see now in the modern era. I think now we would have like a more better understanding of it, and I think he would speak in those kind of terms. Yeah.
I would say that self-reliant, because he understood when he looked at the landscape, when he looked at that time period of what the promises were, and there weren't it was not realistic. And in his commentary, he was like, you know what, just let us do for ourselves. Let us be self-sufficient, because of the environment we have today is a reflection of what was years ago. And if you really deep dive into history and understanding politics in America has always been with the African American at the root of it since its early beginnings. That's nothing unique. Even the first 5 presidents said the things that we did today to the African people will sustain us for generations to come. Generations in the future would have to deal with what we did, our policies, our the hypocrisy in the building of this nation. They're going to have to contend with that today. And so Baldwin understood that, historically speaking. And so his all root is self-reliance when it came down to every conversation, even in any major debate or conversation, is like, we just have to disconnect because it's so hypocritical. Even with the words of all men are created equal, except when I want to exercise my rights. You know, so there's so much. And go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that I was real more intrigued by him after James Baldwin, after really watching The Owl and the Prize, is because I didn't realize how important he was. Coming up in ministry and stuff like that, we had this thing about if you were soft. And looking at Owl and the Prize and seeing who he was and how he spearheaded a lot of the civil rights, and saying that being by himself, because coming from the LGBT community that he was, and let it be known, and how accepted he was, and knowing that that's what he was, and not ashamed of it, but having the profound understanding that he did have, I think that propelled him as well, and that really intrigued me and enlightened me to see the great leaders really bringing him into the forefront, not saying, well, you part of the LGBT, we don't need that, black folks don't need, but for them to do that opened up my eyes to a lot of different ways, a lot of different fights, because we need everybody. And we can't push
but what he did, I'm gonna let you answer. But what he did when he spoke, he always spoke on the sanctity of relationship. Because you're talking about men, you're talking about women, and then you're talking about children. That was his constant argument. So yes, he was a part of that. But at the end of the day, and let me just make this, I'm gonna make a really clear example. Me and my business partner, we studied in Jamaica, early 90s, when a lot of African American students were not spending semesters abroad. When we got back into the States, we sat on panels to say, you know, what was your experience like? And I recall one young man got up and said, you know, I understand your fight because I'm dealing with things as a homosexual. I said, no. If I go to Germany, if I go to any airport, they're going to see me coming. They're going to make a stereotype seeing me coming. And he understood that, what the true fight was. Some of that stuff you can camouflage. When I can't go in with a white thing, it's not going to work. When I walk in to any airport, they're going to know I'm some type of African. And when they speak, they're going to, you know, narrow it down. But there was only so many places that we can go as African Americans. And this was the early 90s. We couldn't go to Africa. Some students were going to Africa. Some of the students were going to Germany. We had our choice, Caribbean or London. That was our choice. And so Baldwin, in most of his commentary, he always uplifted marriage, family, and children. You can look at any documentary. Yes, it was his preference, but his mission. No, I'm not against nobody out there. I'm not. Let me just say that. Don't criticize me. I'm not against any community, but you can go back and look at his conversations yourself, and see how many times he talks about that versus what the experience is of Black citizens.
That's real talk. And to your point, to echo what you're saying, he was big on family and the roles of the man and the woman and the children and stuff like that. So he never really led with his sexuality. It was I'm not oppressed because of that. I'm oppressed because I'm Black. So we're gonna need to deal with that. And like you said, no one knows that unless you tell them. And, you know, there was this thing going around for a long time, this notion that, you know, the black community is homophobic. No, we're not. Not at all. We're the most accepting damn group ever. I mean, you can go to any church and there's always the one gay dude in the choir. I mean, we're very accepting of that. We don't care about that stuff. We're not concerned with what's going on in your bedroom. We're concerned about where we're moving as a people. And James Baldwin never led with that. He was always, I'm here for my people. Damn what I do in the bedroom. We're talking about these issues and we're going to stay focused on that.
And even
So,
with white
yeah.
people, I'm not against you.
Yeah.
I just like myself. You
Yeah.
know, I like myself too. Like, you know, to lift up yourself, it does not mean, the translation does not mean I don't like you. That's not the translation. The translation, I have knowledge of self. And go ahead.
I don't want it missed that James Baldwin also believed that he had the salvation, the knowledge within himself of how to save white people.
Yeah.
Because
Wow.
he says,
Wow.
he said to the white people, I know you.
Oh yeah, I remember
And he
that.
says, you don't know me.
Uh-huh.
And that's very powerful. That
Right.
statement. Very
Yeah.
powerful.
Very good.
And it just transcends all kinds of stuff because it lets you know where this man, like Van said, there was he was ill at ease in this world. He was ill at ease. He knew it wasn't right. He wasn't at peace. He knew it wasn't right, and he knew something needed to be changed.
Wow.
But it took courage.
That's
It took courage. It took willingness to die. He knew he was going to die. And he probably knew he wasn't going to see it change.
Right.
But he knew within himself, as he kept talking and challenging people he knew he was going to set some people free. And he did.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And he still is.
He's still here.
So really quick, I want to piggyback on that. A lot of our leaders, I don't want to say as they mature, but as they go through their struggles and their experiences, and as they get older, they become more critical, I think, of movements and of people, be it Malcolm X, be it MLK, be it whoever. And I think James Baldwin experienced the same thing, if I'm not mistaken. In his later years, he said, maybe we could save white people, but that shouldn't be our priority, right?
Right.
Yeah, he said that shouldn't be a mandate. He's trying to reform our people. If they want to be reformed, fine, be reformed, but that's not our mandate. We have to do for ourselves, like you said, self-reliance.
Yeah,
Where
he
was that?
talked about he's like, not every white person is a white supremacist, but I don't have time to shift or sift
Yeah,
through
he
who's
certainly
good,
said
who's
that.
not.
He ain't got time to try to.
We ain't got time for that. Yeah, and you know his.
I got to survive, live.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, your next point of your
Oh yeah, well, speaking on the relationships, I
yeah,
really
you
thought.
got my note down. I just sent you a note.
And this actually reminded me of a love interest I once had. And it's about a good paragraph, so just let you know I'm not going to just keep going on and on. But and it's the name of the piece is called Sweet Lorraine, and he says that's the way I always felt about her, and so I won't apologize for calling her that now. She understood it. In that far too brief a time when we walked and talked and laughed and drank together, sometimes in the streets and bars and restaurants of the village, sometimes at her house, graciously fleeing the houses of others, and sometimes seeming, for anyone who didn't know us, to be having a knock-down, drag-out battle. We spent a lot of time arguing about history and tremendously related subjects in her Bleecker Street and later Waverly Place flats. And often, just when I was certain that she was about to throw me out as being altogether too rowdy a type, she would stand up, her hands on her hips. For these down-home sessions, she always wore slacks, and pick up my empty glass as though she intended to throw it at me. Then she would walk into the kitchen saying, with a haughty toss of her head, "Really, Jimmy? You ain't right, child." With stern put down, she would hand me another drink and launch into a brilliant analysis of just why I wasn't right. I would often stagger down her stairs as the sun came up, usually in the middle of a paragraph and always in the middle of a laugh. That marvelous laugh. That marvelous face. I loved her. She was my sister and my comrade. Her her going did not so much make me lonely as make me realize how lonely we were. We had that respect for each other, which perhaps is only felt by people on the same side of the barricades, listening to the accumulating thunder of the hooves of horses and the heads of tanks. The first time I saw Lorraine was at the Actors Studio in the winter of 58, 59. She was there as an observer of the workshop production of Giovanni's Room. She sat up in the bleachers, taking on some of the biggest names in American theater because she had liked the play and they in the main hadn't. I thought that was
Now, what's
a
your
little romantic
interpretation?
thing. Oh, it's just romance, man. He was real big on true, genuine love and relationships, and really wanted to understand your partner and understand the where your partner was coming from and putting themselves in your shoes. And to me, one of the things I like most about James Baldwin is he could write anything. I think that's the mark of a good writer, is being able to do anything. Maya Angelou was like that. Being able to do plays, being able to do romance, being able to do serious topics, being able to do like technical writing, like articles and stuff like that. The dude could do it all. And I think like as a writer myself, I want to encapsulate that same thing and push myself too. And one of the things that literature really touches on is romance. And that's one of my favorite subjects to write about. So that's what I got from that. Just those small, intimate moments that make relationships what they are.
And my question
Really
is, who are some of his inspirations? Who inspired him to do?
He was just a fan of literature in general. But yeah, like Frederick Douglass, just even like your typical like Robert Frost, Shakespeare and stuff like that. He cited them a lot. And plus, James Baldwin was a big fan of history. I think it was Malcolm X who said that history is out of all the subjects, it's the most rewarding. So he was a real big history buff. I'm a huge history buff. And if we're even just talking about technique, the more you know about history, the more you know, the more you experience life, that makes you a better writer. So even aside from his ideology, just as a prolific lyricist, as a prolific literary artist, he gives me a lot of inspiration. Just from the level of excellence that his work was and how vast it is. Like she was asking me earlier, what do you think about that? I'm like, well, he wrote a lot of stuff, so it's hard to recall back certain things, but just being so prolific is really inspiring.
And I think at the times too that they were in the middle of what they were into, I think everybody, for the bettermost, was so serious and was so wanting to see change and was so dominant toward that factor,
Right.
that you couldn't really miss nobody. If they were in the day's time, they miss half the damn black folks that they come across, because we'd be the head to be in the damn in his phone.
Yeah.
You miss everybody. And you'd be like John G. Jackson and Henry Clark and all those who died with a passion to give us the understanding that we were here first. We didn't come from no boats like other people saying we did.
Yeah.
And we have been here for the longest. And this is ours. And the only way we're going to get it back is through war. And Francine Cress Wilson has said it the best. We're at war. And I believe they mimicked those words behind James Baldwin and all the rest of those.
Yes.
To come up with a plan of attack for us. And we just haven't done it. And I believe those who are at the end of their road now, we have to come up with some type of plan of attack and really do something. And I think I can't think of his name right now. With Powernomics, whatever.
Claudius.
I think that's the best. That's the best plan of attack to give to any damn president, vice president, whoever the hell better be something. To say, hey, this is what we want. This is what we want to do, and this is what we intend to get. And if we don't get that, well, hell, we're gonna burn this shit down like the white boy did in California. Y'all just charged with arson. Since they don't charge with arson, they killed at least 10,000 of us during the riots of LA. And charged with one white dude with arson.
And it comes a time to burn this shit in 2020. You feel me? But I think what we're doing right now is a form of warfare. We're all in the same room. We're all on code, supporting the black businesses. Like, not to pop my own collar, but I give to them because they let me have like my little space over here. I just donate to them. Shit. I appreciate y'all because what they're doing.
Yeah, that, I want to give them a hand.
So stuff like this and just having these conversations. And another thing too is really lionizing our icons, man. What we're doing right now with Brother James Baldwin, because he's transitioned, but the dude is still here. His legacy still lives on and is still powerful and it's motivating us. So he had a life that was not in vain, and we're sitting here discussing them right now, and it's very powerful.
That's why I was saying that he was on two fronts, because he was accepted the way he was, but at the same time, he had a genuine passion, and you couldn't push him. You couldn't push him out. He wasn't gonna let you know it. And I believe he was ahead of his time, and he was so necessary for all of us.
And the thing too is he was real big on. He inspired me. Be the writer you were meant to be. The blackest thing you can do is be who you were meant to be. We're all unique. We're not one monolith. Be yourself, and don't let this system take that away from you. That's the most gangster thing you can do. Real talk.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
So you got any more points?
I've been hogging.
No, it's just interesting. We won't go the fire next time. It's just interesting that his commentary, I think his nephew, was about 100 years of the Emancipation Proclamation. And here we are, 100 years of James Baldwin. And just really trying to analyze his life, work, his literary experience, his articles, his essays. And this is what he did in the Fire of Next Time, his analysis of the Emancipation Proclamation. And did the nation achieve what it wanted to achieve?
Right. And during the Civil War, Lincoln kind of said, "I shall see the superior position appointed to the white man." So, what you're talking about, he's kind of looking at that and saying, "Well, we're split into basically two Americas." It's almost kind of like it's understood that the Constitution doesn't apply to us. It's understood. When he was talking about the emancipation, how we're treated in this country, nothing is living up to that as far as how we're treated in this country. And to your point, we're 100 years later removed, and we're still talking about the same thing. So.
And he did dive into Christianity. And
He died of what?
no, he dived into Christianity.
Oh, dived.
Yeah.
He dived. He talked. He did, had a conversation.
I was going to say, you crucified him?
No. I should say he dived into Christianity, and he's even seeing how that was how you had the church, the black church, and the white church.
Yeah.
Even within the spiritual realm, there cannot be unity. And again, so we're on a brim of how did he see race relations?
And I'm glad to see today. I hate to say this because we're all of church and whatever in our backgrounds, but I'm happy to see today how the church as a whole, evangelicals, that phrase has been shown naked as powerless and as racist and as biased as it is, and black people are part of it. And I hate to say it, but I'm so glad that it's out there now. And so you can do with that whatever you want to. But
They're doing with what they're doing it within Project 2025. It deals.
But James Baldwin had an issue because he was also a person who studied the Bible as well.
Right.
He had a problem with the way people use it and things.
So that's amazing that it's out in the open, but now they're going to the foundation, and we understand Christianity at one point was weaponized against enslaved people, and so to see, I don't know if we did have a conversation last Thursday on Project 2025, and we have weekly conversation on Project 2025, but it is loaded. And you know, again, this James Baldwin, his mind, his thinking, how well read he is so crucial in examination of what we're dealing with. And it is so important because this is in writing. I applaud the whole effort. I've got to go on record. The organization, I know she's wrapping me up. Project 2025 is nothing short of what every group, especially during politics, should organize into. Not complain about it. Let's get our Project 2025 a position, a thrust, you know, and we do have something as comparative, the Poor People's Campaign. So every group that is under attack has a platform, and get this, backed by money. so
They passed that.
a lot of okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I'm trying to keep you on schedule. You told me to keep you on schedule. So now I'm going to close out with this quotes. Did you still want each person to share a James Baldwin quote? Because we run out of time.
Yeah, you want to who want to start? 'Cause I gotta find mine.
I can.
Okay.
So everybody fill out your phones and find James Baldwin to share.
I got.
I gotta go. Yeah.
You can't repeat it.
No.
Because we got so many quotes. So we got to
Right.
hear it. We got to find another one.
The quote I have of him is says, "Love does not begin and end with, love does not begin and end the way we seem to think it does. Love is a battle. Love is a war. Love is a growing up."
So if you want to, we have a lot of items on the Doc Bookshop page, even in Black August. If you go to the page, and we have a lot on James Baldwin. But I would say for me, that my favorite quote is, "You think your pain and your heartbreak are unprecedented in the history of the world, but then you read." Of course.
Which is on the door.
Which is on the door. I often wonder what I'd do if there weren't any books in the world.
Wow.
And that is, again, what we're headed to. Everything is coming, 180 and 360 at the same time. Like, so imagine that. So anybody, I guess we could start left to right.
Okay.
Go ahead.
One of my favorite quotes is, "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced." That's
Ooh,
a good one.
I should
I
have
love
that.
that one.
I like that one. Oh, that's a good one.
Mine is, love takes off the mask that we fear we cannot live without, and no, we cannot live within.
Bars.
Might as well reference to be a Negro in this country and relatively conscious is to be in a rage almost all the time.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's a deep one right there.
That's
We can just pull them out for days. The paradox of education is precisely this: that as one begins to become conscious, one begins to examine the society in which he is educated, in which he is being educated.
True.
And last, I guess, but not least, to defend oneself against a fear is simply to ensure that one will one day be conquered by it. Fears must be faced.
Okay, not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced.
She already said that.
She got
she already got it. She got it. And I got my couple over here. Our Doc couple.
That was mine.
Oh, really? Okay.
Okay, my favorite quote is, "People can cry much easier than they can change."
Damn.
Wow.
People can cry much easier than they can change.
To be a Negro in this country and to be relatively conscious is to
Brother, he just ran.
Someone just ran that?
He was sitting next to me, bro. He was sitting next to me.
You must be the main one.
Yeah.
What the person
I can't get myself
finish the rest of it. Okay.
I got them.
I use the word love here, not merely in the personal sense, as a state of being or a state of grace, not in the infantile American sense of being made happy, but in the tough and universal sense of quest and daring and growth.
Listen, you know,
All right, did you find one for us?
Well, my internet's not working anyway, so.
So,
The most dangerous creation of any society is the man who has nothing to lose.
Yeah.
oh my God, that's a wrap right there. Oh my God. So, thank you. I want to thank everybody that came out. Everybody that's looking at us online. I truly appreciate it. I hope this is an ongoing conversation. This is the beginning of many conversations because this is such an important body of work. Our brother here has a podcast show. Maybe he can have a part 2 on his show. You know, he had in Notes of Native Son, he had all these different parts. So maybe you can have like part 2, and we'll do another conversation. Let everybody know you're.
So I'm John Williams. My podcast show is the John Williams Shepherd Show. It's YouTube, also StreamYard. You can catch me at JEShepard, JESHEPARD76 @gmail.com, or you can contact me at 1-682-294-3601.
So he's going to probably have another conversation that we can all be on. So like, follow, share with us, and then when we get the information, we'll post it here. And anybody else want to talk about their experience or their business or anything like that, or if they're doing an upcoming conversation?
Yeah, you can find all my platforms at thestormypoet.com. It has like all my books and all my podcasts and all that stuff. So just thestormypoet.com.
Alrighty, close it up. Thank you for
Yeah.
follow us on all platforms. Please follow us. Thank you for all the love online. Please follow us and share. Thank you.